Thank you, Amy. And good afternoon, everyone. Delighted to be here, a part of this. I'm going to pick up right where Amy left off with this well-known image of Charles Willson Peale in his museum, because he, probably better than any single person, embodies this overlap of science and art in the early 19th century. And I'm thinking in particular the way he displayed his collections in his museum with these wonderful dioramas, a detail of which were revealed in Titian Ramsay Peale's study for his father's self-portrait. Unfortunately, none of the dioramas survive, and we don't have very good detailed descriptions of them, but we do have some images that were almost certainly derived from them. Amy mentioned Alexander Wilson earlier, and I'm showing you a plate, another plate from American Ornithology. The bald eagle, as with many of the other birds in his book, was drawn from a specimen in Peale's museum. We think that possibly the background was based on the diorama itself, so this may be the only surviving depiction of what one of the Peale dioramas looked like. And it shows ways in which Peale's art had a ripple effect through other artists into the outside world through publications. This very similar posed eagle by Audubon, it may have come from the same source. Obviously, Audubon knew the eagle well and drew from his own experience, but he also may have based his work either on Wilson's, which would make it a second generation removed from Peale's museum, or perhaps on Peale's diorama itself. The picture was criticized by George Ord and Charles Waterton and others as being copied from Wilson, and there certainly are some similarities, but I think more likely they had a common source in the dioramas. Peale's museum was very much a popular museum. He was charging admission, he wanted the public to come and see it, and he had not only mounted specimens and preserved specimens of all sorts, but even live specimens, including a pair of grizzly bear cubs that were presented to him through courtesy of Thomas Jefferson, but from Zubal and Pike on one of his western expeditions. The cubs were very cute at first, but then, of course, they grew up and became a little bit more unruly. And sadly, when one of them escaped, Peale had to kill it and then killed its sibling. Titian Peale made this drawing of them after they were mounted for display. And then that picture was in turn copied by Thomas Doughty and published and disseminated much more widely through the Cabinet of Natural History, a popular magazine of the period. So Peale had huge effect even to those who didn't have the chance to actually visit his museum in Philadelphia. Visual imagery was, of course, the language of exchange internationally during that period, and I show just as an example George Cuvier's plate of mastodon teeth. So this dialogue went both ways across the Atlantic. Specimens were at the heart of these discussions, and the Academy of Natural Sciences, which was founded in 1812, at the same time Peale's museum was operating, was very much focused on the specimens and on the scientific exchange of information. And I wanted to differentiate between the two, and you'll see as they go along. As Peale's museum actually began to decline from the 1820s into the 40s when it was finally dissolved, the Academy of Natural Sciences was moving in the opposite direction. It was growing in numbers and particularly in the size of its collections. And I show you here just a range of some of the images, the buildings that the Academy occupied from its founding in 1812 up until its current building, built in 1876. Unfortunately, we don't have as many interior views of these museum buildings as I wish we did. We do have a few, including, interestingly, the one on the upper left-hand corner is alleged to be the earliest interior photograph of a museum existing. This is a daguerreotype which shows, among other people, Edgar Allan Poe, who was then doing shell studies at the Academy. But as you can see from all of these images, even up until 1900, the museum was pretty much a collection of specimens. It was case after case after case, arranged systematically for the use of the members. Although it was open to the public from 1827 on, the public entertainment was not the primary mission of the Academy of Natural Sciences. All of that changed quite abruptly in 1868, not at the instigation of the Academy, but almost by serendipity. The British artist Benjamin Waterhouse Hawkins, who had made his reputation by creating the first life-size sculptures of dinosaurs for the Crystal Palace in London in 1853, came to America, specifically to New York, to build a Paleozoic museum, as it was called. And since there were no other experts on dinosaurs at the time, he came to Philadelphia and spent a good deal of time at the Academy. In thanks for all the help that he received there, he presented the Academy with a fully articulated dinosaur skeleton. The skeleton had been found by Academy members and described by Joseph Leidy at the Academy. Waterhouse Hawkins thought that it would be good to show it in its lifelike posture. So you see him there underneath the sculpture on the left-hand side. This is a bit of a takeoff from Charles Willson Peale's own erection of the mastodon skeleton in his museum. But surprisingly, 1868, this was the first articulated dinosaur to be seen in any museum anywhere in the world. And the effect was enormous. In the first year after it was put on display, 100,000 visitors came to the museum to see it. And this was at a time when the museum was only open to the public for 2 afternoons a week, and it was closed for the month of August and July and August. So we're talking about 40 or 50 days and 100,000 people coming to visit it. Art had clearly taken science to a new level and made it a popular phenomenon. The end of the 19th century, the Academy commissioned the Blaschke Studio, the same ones known for having made the glass flowers at Harvard, to create a series of displays of invertebrates, marine invertebrates, in this case an anemone, which were dazzlingly beautiful, and we look at them today as works of art. I'm sure that the curators who commissioned this work to be done saw them simply as glass reproductions of scientific specimens. But it raises this interesting overlap of where does art begin and science end. In the 20th century, the Academy changed the superficial exterior appearance of the building, removing the Gothic Revival facade and replacing it with a sort of federal building as part of the City Beautiful movement. And inside, dramatic changes were soon to occur as well. From the 1920s through the 60s, following the lead of our younger sister institution, the American Museum in New York, and others, the Academy began developing a series of dioramas. And you see here just a small model by the Jonas Brothers Studios. These projects, as we know well from Steve Quinn's book and from work Michael Anderson is doing here at Yale, took a great team effort, as Amy refers to. It was taxidermists, painters, specialists of all kinds to artificially recreate a lifelike habitat in 3 dimensions. Many of these dioramas still exist at the Academy, as they do here at the Peabody and at the American Museum. In more recent times, the Academy has focused specifically on the overlap of science and art by creating something that we call the Art of Science Gallery. And in this space, we do periodic exhibits by creative artists, contemporary artists, some of them quite whimsical in nature, others more seriously scientific. One of our speakers later this afternoon, James Prosick, will be exhibiting in the Art of Science Gallery later this year. But it's a wonderful place that brings together the communities of art and science. We also thought that when we did our bicentennial book, we wanted the book not only to reflect the history of the institution, but its place in contemporary America. And we commissioned Rosamund Purcell to make photographs from our collections. Many of you know Rosamund's work. She's a Boston-based photographer who worked closely with Stephen Jay Gould on a number of books and many of her own as well. She's photographed in museums all over the world, but I think she is perhaps the best of the contemporary photographers in making scientific specimens of interest to the art community as well as to the scientific community. 2 weeks ago, we opened a bicentennial exhibit at the Academy, which really brings us full circle. It puts specimens back on display again. But I think some of our founders would be surprised, perhaps even puzzled by the way we've done this. These were arranged for purely aesthetic purposes. There's no information except on a separate card about what they are. So as our founders would have arranged them all taxonomically and had long explanations of what everything was and how they related to each other, these were chosen to attract the interest of the public and to reinsert the aesthetic importance of science into the public dialogue. We were told to keep our presentations very short, so that's a 200-year history in, in less than 10 minutes. But I invite any of you who would like to come to Philadelphia and help us continue the exploration of science and art. Thank you.